Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm your host, Mike Calabrese, joined by the Action Network's college baseball expert, Collin Wilson. From 64 teams down to 2, we have our championship series set between the LSU Tigers and the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. But before we preview the finals, we need to talk about the cursed athletic program that is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Collin, just walk me through the entire journey emotionally and where you are at now, days removed from it.
Not good. I actually want to say thank you to Twitter, as most people like to hop into my DMs and completely tear me up when Arkansas loses. Actually, it was a very respectable crowd. So the first thing I want to say is, even to some LSU fans that were apologetic about what happened. And my response to everybody is, yeah, I'm in a dark place, but when have I been in a light place? I have since in the last 48 hours been to regroup with some of my Razorback alumni, with some of my best friends I've had for 30 years. And we had a discussion about what it is to be in this fan base. Because my son is a freshman at the University of Arkansas. My best friend's son is a sophomore at the University of Arkansas. And they were both asking, what in the fuck do we get ourselves into? Well, let me review for you the top 3 worst moments in Razorback history, okay? Because number 3, by far, was what I went to Matt Mitchell with in 2018 at the birth of this podcast, this very podcast. Matt Mitchell, 2018, came to Stuckey and I said, I'm making a drop for this podcast for college football. I need the biggest moments in college football history. What can I put in there? I said, stumble and fumble. Stumble and fumble. Arkansas, Tennessee, 1998, 8-0 versus 8-0. We had the lead. We could have been national champ, number 1 in the nation. We could have been national title contenders. Instead, Clint Sterner took the snap with a minute left, turned around, stumbled on Brandon Burlsworth's foot, fumbled the ball. Tennessee got it, won the game, and won the national championship. That's only number 3. The number 1 most hurtful thing and by the way, we cut that Sean McDonough stumble and fumble. I told Matt Mitchell, you have to put that in our podcast. It's there. It's there for a reason. There's a reason Arkansas's version of Tusk is the background to our podcast. It's humbling. We're vulnerable. We have a chip on our shoulder because we're the 48th, 49th best state in literacy, teen pregnancy. Like, that's why we are an asshole fan base, because we have to deal with this shit and from our teams. And that's only the number 3 worst thing that's ever happened to us. The worst thing that's ever happened to us was in 2018 when you have 2 strikes, 2 outs, and a 1-game lead on Oregon State, and you let a ball drop between 3 defenders in foul territory. That's the number 1 worst thing that's ever happened. But what happened the other night was worse than those things, because Sterner fumbling was 1 play. Oregon State, that ball dropping a foul, that was 1 play. What the Sam Hill happened the other night? Where he would all of a sudden isn't turning 2 with a clear double play roll up? We're not walking Jared Jones with open bases. Like Davalon, who's been near perfect, a spitting image of Lenny Dykstra's kid, the sweetest kid on earth, slips and the ball bounces off his ass. And let's get past that. That hit that LSU had, if Kajil does not jump up and tag it with his glove and it doesn't stop the momentum, our center fielder picks it and throws it home, and we still haven't lost the game. It's tied. The series of events that have to happen the other night to get Arkansas knocked out of Omaha is the second worst thing that's ever happened in Razorback history. And all I can do is sit back in my 40s and stare at the next generation and say, I'm sorry. Your name is getting engraved on the sidewalk when you graduate, and your lifetime of pain, your clock starts now. And that's where we're at as Arkansas Razorback fans.
Well, there's no easy transition out of that, but I appreciate your candor walking me through the emotional graveyard that is being a Hogs fan. There's not much that can be said. I will say one follow-up question. I would like to say, because you've talked about Dave Van Horn, you've talked about what it meant to him to potentially get over the hump, get that first national championship. He thought that he had it clearly with this team, and the emotional outpouring, before he even got to Omaha, and then the post-game presser. Not walking Jared Jones. We haven't, put much on his shoulders. Clearly he's someone who assembles the roster. He's managing the pen. He's managing the lineup, all these different things. How much of a gaffe do you think that was? And do you think that gets lost to history now because the highlight is going to be the slip, the ball hits him in the shoulder, it rolls past him, they tie the game, they lose. But do you think really it was one of those managerial mistakes that deserves to be blown up a little bit?
There's no sense in disrespecting Dave Van Horn because a lot of people won't. But if you've listened to this college baseball podcast, I have lightly treaded in that area. It's different when it's Pittman, when it's Musselman. Those guys are different. I can go at them all day. Dave Van Horn is really untouchable, but we've had consistent issues with the decisions we've made with pitching for years. The usage of Kevin Kopps was a problem. The usage of moving guys into the starting position and out, like Gabe Gackle, is a problem. And I don't know why we can't seem to figure it out. How Parker Coyle and Christian Fauch didn't even get a pitch thrown. How Aiden Jimenez is out there and not Fauch or Coyle. Our best pitchers never even saw the field. And the fact that we didn't walk Jared Jones is just one of those little mini paper cuts on your hand of the Dave Van Horn love that we have. That's there. And that's not going away. It's the same thing I say about James Franklin with Penn State football. National title contender? Absolutely. Limitation by the coach? Absolutely.
All right, let's now turn to the championship series between LSU and Coastal. We're going to go game by game with the pitching matchups first. We're going to talk wind and weather. We're going to talk about an exact outcome and paths to victory for both of these programs. But let's start with game one. Your projection you have for the Chants: Cameron Flukie against the Bayou Bengals, Cade Anderson. You have Anderson, the lefty, going off at about minus 160 with a total settling in between 9.5 and 10. Clearly, LSU has the advantage here in terms of what Anderson's brought to the bump really for the past 2 months. He's been someone that's been good for about 10 Ks per outing. He's pitched his way into the first round of the Major League Baseball draft, at least if you put any stock in those mock drafts. But this Coastal team and Kevin Schnall, he has pulled every lever proper, in terms of how he utilizes his bullpen. If you want to say it's the opposite of the Arkansas experience, I wouldn't hold that against you. So clearly, this is a team that could potentially suppress runs. Do you think they can squeeze one out here in game one, or do you think game two is a better spot to look for Coastal?
Well, LSU is 11th in the nation in fielding percentage, and they will be able to scoop and throw anybody that lays down a sack bunt. I go back to Arkansas. You look at that bunt that LSU laid down. Somehow Reese Robinette, he charged the ball, then came back and caught it. Arkansas is number 2 in the nation in fielding percentage. LSU is 11th in the nation in fielding percentage. I think any bunts that Coastal lays down, you can guarantee that Jay Johnson has his team getting ready for shifts. What do we do with runners on? That's going to come into massive play here in game one. If you look at the wind, it's insane. It is the most ferocious it's been in the entire Omaha series of this year. 17 mile an hour sustained winds coming in from right and center field. Gusts up to 35 miles an hour. That is the weather that I'm used to in Omaha. We've kind of had a steady breeze in, a lot of breeze in, but it's not been like this. This is going to be ferocious. This is going to be Jared Jones power hitting, stopping in the alley kind of wind. That completely plays into Coastal. Now, they haven't seen Cade Anderson, and people that haven't seen Cade Anderson the first time around really struggle with his movement on his ball. Will Coastal be able to get bunts down? Sure. Is LSU going to be able to pick it cleanly? Sure. So I do believe, the mathematical projection that I have of 9.8, that's just simply, it's simply calculated base runs, starter xFIPs, which if you look at this, Cameron Flukie, 4.3, Cade Anderson, 3.3. There's a reason that LSU is minus 160, minus 165 here, which is exactly where I put it. They should win this game, but at the same time, to me, if I was betting this game, I would go under the number, 8.5. I know that's below the projection. But the first time you see Cade Anderson around, this is the first time they're going to see Cameron Flukie around too. And with that wind blowing in, I think that this is a pregame under, and I think this is the second time the order comes up, third, fourth inning. I think that's a live over, and that's how I'm going to be playing game one. I think the number is perfect on the side. You just don't know if LSU, both of these teams are playing out of their mind right now. LSU can pick bunts cleanly. So it's going to be and both of them have catchers that can throw people out. So this is going to be a very well evenly matched. The market's correct, but it's an under game all the way, especially with the wind.
You also have listed off the projected stopper closers for both programs here in game one and game two. For Coastal, it's Ryan Lynch and then Dominic Carbone. And then for LSU, it's Zach Cowan and Kason Evans. In terms of those back ends, which one would you prefer? Do you think it's a coin flip?
Probably Zach Cowan as a stopper over Ryan Lynch, and probably Dominic Carbone over Casey Evans, although I'd probably get some LSU corn dogs thrown at me for saying that. But, I think the thing is both of them have elite bullpens. The one player that has not been mentioned is Chase Shores. And Chase Shores was great through about 20 pitches against Arkansas and in other spots this year. You look at some things against Little Rock and some other series. But once that movement starts tailing out of the strike zone, which it does, the more he pitches, that thing gets so much spin, that 3,000 RPMs on it, it just can't stay in the strike zone. It starts going everywhere. And so Chase Shores can throw 101 for LSU. And Zach Cowan can do, pretty close to the same. But the problem is they use Zach Cowan as a starter in bracket 2. So is Zach Cowan the true stopper here, or is Chase Shores the stopper? They're going to use them both. It's going to be matchup dependent. They're going to do their homework and make sure they get the right guy out here. Overall, from a team ERA and a team xFIP, LSU is sitting at 4.7. Coastal is sitting at a flat 5. So it is an advantage to LSU. I think they have more arms, but the Ryan Lynch and Dominic Carbone combination is very good for Coastal.
Now, Jay Johnson, do you think he is going to, turn to Cowan less, trying to keep in mind if he needs him in game 3? Because for those not in the know, these are 3 games back to back to back. There's no off day. There's no way to kind of rest in terms of your reliever who you want to turn into a starter. And they only did it twice all season, but Cowan got the start against Arkansas. He was pretty great, 5 1/3 innings. He scattered 4 hits. He struck out 6 in that matchup against the Hogs. So do you see him potentially trying to save him, or do you think it's going to be a true cobbled together bullpen kind of start in game 3?
I think Jay Johnson will do everything he can to keep Anthony Ianson and Zach Cowan out of game 1. Because if they win, Coastal might be dead to rights in game 2 without Anthony Ianson and Zach Cowan. If they're trailing, he won't use Zach Cowan or Anthony Ianson. So the trick here for Jay Johnson is that sweet spot that he had in the tie ball game against Arkansas. You saw Anthony Ianson up on the rubber in the pen, right? Down, back to the bench, up on the rubber. That is the ace in the hole. Now, Anthony Ianson is scheduled to pitch game 2, but I guarantee since Zach Cowan's already got some pitches into him, he needs probably another day of rest. I think that this is going to be do everything we can, LSU perspective, Jay Johnson, to keep Zach Cowan and Anthony Ianson out of this lineup in game 1.
Now, you just mentioned the game 2 matchup, and Coastal is likely going to send Morrison to the bump, their ace. So there's a little bit of gamesmanship using him in game 2. I was surprised, though, in terms of your pricing projection, closer to minus 170 for Ianson. Do you think there's value on Coastal or potentially on a run line in game 2?
Yes, because Jacob Morrison is pitching out of his mind. He's pitching above his projections. And I know exactly where this number comes from because both of them have ERAs. Anthony Ianson, 2.7, Jacob Morrison, 2.2. And you look at that and you say, how could Jacob Morrison be an underdog here? Well, the answer really is in the xFIP. Jacob Morrison's xFIP is 4.78. Anthony Iason's a full run lower at 3.76. And that's where the crux of this comes from. Team xFIPs, like I said, already about the same. Closer xFIPs about the same. So when you look at this overall, this number is derived by the fact that Anthony Ianson is backed by an LSU offense that has a half run more in calculated base runs and a full run lower in his own xFIP. So that's where the minus 167 projection is coming from. I think win or lose could shift this 15 cents. I think if LSU wins game 1, you could see Ianson as high as minus 180. I think if Coastal wins, you could see this as low as Ianson minus 150. So make sure and grab the best price. Also, wind is still going to be a factor in game 2.
Yeah, I wanted to double dip back into the wind just for a second here. How big of a deal is this that LSU, who's in the 100 home run club this year, they've hit home runs in back-to-back games, their slugging advantage, which is so significant. Coastal's 132nd in slugging percentage in Division One. It is so rare for a team to be outside the top 100 to make it to Omaha, let alone to get to the championship series. Do you think this is a true equalizer? And if so, in those first 2 games, is that going to be enough, for them to be able to squeak out a game 3-2, 4-3, something like that?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a major advantage of Coastal Carolina. I'll tell you why. Because that wind flipped a little bit at the beginning of the Arkansas game, and both Arkansas and LSU were hitting can of corn pop flies and made it to the warning track. When that wind is blowing at any mile per hour out of right field and out of center field, pop flies can become home runs easy from places in the lineup that you didn't expect. this wind is completely a neutralizer against LSU's powerful offense. And I think, when I was up there for a number of days at the beginning of this College World Series, the humidity is just a dome of partly cloudy sitting over it with humidity high, and it just kind of sucks the water out of everything, including the ball, and the ball doesn't fly. So, I think this is a huge advantage for Coastal. I think it plays into their game. They have to get bunts down. And a lot of LSU pitchers throw high in the strike zone. And if Coastal is able to manage to get those on the ground, that's a big advantage for them. So I think this is going to be interesting. I think Coastal's going to steal a game here. I don't know what your thoughts are. By the way, congrats on you for Coastal LSU exacta. But also I was big on Coastal 6-1. So, I'm walking into this with a 6-1 and a 7-1, for both teams. But, if I brought no money to the table, Calabrese, I don't know what you would say, but I think Coastal would steal a game here. So I would either take Coastal to win it all, or I would take a 2-1 LSU win and try to hedge at game 3. Cause I see Coastal being just a complete gnat. And I think game 2 with Jacob Morrison on the mound is where they get it done.
Oh, I think it's going to game 3. We'll touch on that in just a second because I wrote it up for action. It'll post soon. It'll be in the New York Post on Saturday. A plus 255 payout for an exacta. We'll get to that in just one moment. Go yard all baseball season with Underdog's Pick'em games. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, so you can play now in your state. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be the next? To play, all you have to do is download the app and choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats. You can choose from things like home runs, strikeouts, total bases, and much more. Once your pick feels good, you can lock it in and play for as little as $1. If you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. If you've been following the majors lately, you know that Shohei Ohtani is back on the bump, so you can take over on his strikeouts and home runs in the same game if you like, and that's what's so great about Underdog. Everything is on the table every single day. Download the Underdog app and sign up with promo code BBOC to unlock a special offer for up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. That's promo code BBOC. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, before we get to our exact predictions on how this is going to unfold, the price that you like, the angle that you're taking, let's just talk about paths to victory for both of these teams. You mentioned it with Coastal needing to play with small ball, but also from a live betting perspective, it seems as though LSU can win in a multitude of ways. They certainly can hang a crooked number late in a game and break open a bullpen. But Coastal, is there any value in playing them if they were to fall down by 1 or 2 runs in any of these games?
I think the strategy to take is a Coastal series price or a Coastal 2-1 if you want to get into the exotics, and then look at game 3. Because game 3, I project Riley Eichhoff against Zach Cowan, and that comes in at minus 110-ish, minus 115 either way. And so what you're going to be able to do is get your plus money props or plus money futures in now. You're going to be able to hedge in game 3, which should be an evenly distributed game. And if it gets to game 3, you better expect that Anthony Ionson's been used and Cade Anderson's been used. And this is a true level playing field. So I don't think Coastal's going down without a fight. And I think game 3 is going to provide us with a pretty good coin flip situation to get out of any plus money tickets you have in case you're feeling a little froggy and you don't want to let it ride.
Now, LSU, they've been a team, we just saw it, came back, erased multiple late game deficits to knock off Arkansas. Is there value in keeping your money in the dugout and waiting for them to go down by a run or 2 and then hitting them on a live number?
Yeah, LSU, absolutely. I think both of these teams are completely capable of coming back, but more LSU. LSU's had their backs pinned to the wall for weeks. They just come back, and, good for them and their yo-yos. Happy for them because they're not feeling any pressure right now, and they're on house money. LSU is absolutely on house money. They had almost dead to rights beaten by Little Rock, a team that needed to win out and win the College World Series to even have a 500 record. Had LSU dead to rights. And if you guys have been in a casino and you sit down with, say, $500 at the blackjack table, You get up to $1,500. You're on house money. All of a sudden, you're surrendering like 16 against the 20. You're doing things that you probably wouldn't do. Maybe you're splitting tens and you see me at the end of the table getting up and walking away. I don't know. But when you're on house money, start doing stupid shit. And LSU right now is on house money and playing like it. So I think they can come back from any deficit. I don't think they're scared of anything. Coastal, on the other hand, if you're looking at psychological and emotional, all I could preach about the last 2 weeks is that Arkansas is wound up like a clock. They're tight. And you saw that in the bullpens, and you saw that in the dugouts. Tight, because they knew the pressure and the situation. Coastal has won so many games in a row. What happens when they're down? What happens if they lose game one? So from an emotional perspective and from a live betting perspective, LSU is absolutely the team that you would want to more focus on when they're down.
In terms of a prediction, I teased it. I think LSU wins this in 3 games. I just have a hard time picturing this Coastal team that has not lost in 26 games. This is a team that doesn't just want to win. They expect to win. And it's not some cute underdog story. They got a national championship trophy at their facility. This is a program. Yes, they're on a first-year coach, manager, I should say, but he was an All-American at Coastal, their first in program history in 1999. He pisses teal. This entire staff, whether it's the rotation, the bullpen, the lineup, all the way down to, the bat boys, everyone just kind of feels as though they belong here and they expect to win. And when you have a guy like Morrison in game 2 to be able to fall back on should they not win game 1, I feel pretty confident in him going out and giving them 7 really, really good innings. So for that reason, at plus 255, I like LSU to win this thing in 3. Because there's just, as we mentioned, so many ways for them to win. They could get a dynamic pitching performance. They could go ahead and score, 5 or 6 runs at the back end of a game, breaking open a bullpen. So I just view this as there's more outs. If you want to extend that casino analogy, you're playing a little Texas Hold'em. You have different opportunities to make a flush, make a straight, get 2 pair. There's lots of ways that LSU can win, where Coastal, I think, has a narrower path, but they've just been so good for so long. And what's also interesting, we talked about this going back to one of the very first episodes from this season. Yes, they played in the Sun Belt, but they challenged themselves in the non-conference, and they played so well on the road consistently. I think that's something that really translates. It's great to be dominant on your home diamond, but you have to be able to do it in hostile, environments on the road, and then to be able to do it on this big stage in Omaha. It's clearly the lights are not too bright for the Chants. So I'm going to go ahead with LSU in 3. What's your play here?
Yeah, I think the play is going to be Coastal Carolina plus 155 in the market to win this thing right now. And this is all numerical based because I project LSU to win this series minus 175. I agree with you that this goes 3 games. But if you're sitting on a plus 155 ticket for Coastal, which I think has about 15 cents of value, and you consider that Riley Eichhoff is going to go up probably against Zach Cohen in game 3 with a minus 115 projected money line on both sides, you're able to take LSU and you're able to make some sense of profit with a Coastal plus 155 and an LSU minus 115. So that is my angle. I would take Coastal, and I would not hesitate to hedge at LSU at a minus 120 or better in game 3.
The last thing about game 3, going to a reliever, putting him in for just his 3rd start of the entire season. I think the wide spread of variations and what could happen. He could pitch an inning. He could pitch 5 innings. He could give up 7 runs, as he did, I believe, against Little Rock, or he'd go ahead and pitch a gem like he did against Arkansas. I just see this wild spread of potential outcomes. So with that being said, in terms of not panicking, or on the other side of it, trying to hedge out and buy out of some of your action, what do you think they need to see from him in game 3 in terms of Johnson and his pitching coach to be able to say this is enough to at least buy us 2 or 3 innings? And if they don't see him bringing his good stuff, maybe it's time to hit the panic button.
Keep the ball out of the dirt. You noticed that the reason Arkansas was able to threaten and should have won that game until the second worst thing that's happened in Razorback history was because the ball was thrown in the dirt. Shores had a problem throwing in the dirt. Cowan has a problem throwing in the dirt. And if you see, I don't know if this is going to happen, you see Jaden Newt or any of the names that we haven't talked about from the LSU pen come running out there out of the bullpen, make a live bet on Coastal. Some of these pitchers, I'm not saying that they're bad pitchers, but they can't keep it out of the dirt. And LSU's catcher has had problems containing that. And Coastal is a predator for teams, for pitchers to throw it in the dirt, and they want to advance bases. So if you see Jaden Newt coming into the game and LSU's in a tie ball game or something like that, I'd get my live betting going, because Zach Cohen's key is to keep it out of the dirt. Chase Shores is key, keep it out of the dirt. Jaden Newt has not proven that he can keep it out of the dirt. So that is going to be primary artillery for Coastal to win this series.
If you've been listening to BBOC throughout the spring and into the summer covering college baseball, we really appreciate you, because this has now become a year-round podcast. But right around the corner is college football. Collin, which topic, futures market, team, conference, angle, coach on the hot seat, what are you most excited to talk about when you have your first full episode of the season for college football?
I have this right here for everybody that has a camera. I'd just like to say that I'm pretty happy all my Clemson futures got down 2 months ago, because there's going to be a fever for that team. And I'd also like to talk about, as you're wearing, I'd also like to say that I think Stuckey, the second I found out John Mateer was coming to OU, I said, Heisman, OU futures, all that. And I think he told me I was crazy and we can't do this again, like another year of OU love. But if you read the novel that I just flashed right there, there's a lot of Sooner love. There's a lot of Clemson love. And frankly, I'm in love with teams that hire offensive coordinators and bring quarterbacks in through the portal. So you can count me in as a Utah fan for the Big 12 too. So I am very much ready. And in other spots, and I've heard it out of our podcast, that quietly we all have been dipping into Southern Miss. So I take that too. But I'm amped. I believe we return here in a couple of weeks for college football. It's the most glorious time of the year. So I look forward to it. Hopefully that's some good little tidbits for what's going to come here in the middle of July.
The one tidbit I want to throw in, I wrote up for action, I want to say about a month ago. I think we're firmly at the beginning of the Mulligan era of college football as it relates to winning the national championship. 154 years of college football. There was exactly one undisputed 2-loss champion. That was LSU in 2007, the craziest year in college football history. Upsets left and right. LSU was actually undefeated in regulation for that year, but they did win the Natty with 2 losses. Now we triple the field, and then lo and behold, immediately Ohio State wins it with 2 losses. I think the beauty of this is that there's going to be some really good numbers if you're patient. And I'll give you an example. Ohio State, Texas. I like both of those teams. I am not betting them in the preseason futures market, because why would I? I can get one of them right off of that loss. I think there's going to be natural overreaction by the public. And even in previous seasons, if you want to lose, you want to lose early. But the fact of the matter is, for teams in the Big Ten and the SEC, you can lose twice and make the playoff. Absolutely. I think we're probably going to see a 3-loss team out of the Big Ten or SEC make the playoff either this year or next year, depending on the format. So I think there's just great opportunity in this Mulligan era to get more value on teams that the public sells on far too early. So that and so many topics, we're going to go deep into the G5 lands as always in the BBOC podcast. I'm excited to deliver that throughout the season. For Collin Wilson, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thank you so much for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This completes our college baseball coverage. Enjoy the championship series in Omaha. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.